I never thought a regular Tuesday at Northridge High could turn into the kind of nightmare that claws at your mind long after it's over. My name's Ethan, a junior at the time, just trying to survive algebra and dodge the usual high school drama. But that day, October 17th, 2023, something broke in the fabric of our boring routine, and I'm still not sure I've pieced it all together. It started like any other morning. The air was crisp, leaves skittering across the parking lot as I shuffled into school, my backpack slung over one shoulder. First period was history with Mr. Callahan, who was droning on about the Civil War. I was half listening, doodling in my notebook, when the intercom crackled to life. At first, it was just static, like someone had bumped the mic. Then the principal's voice cut through, sharp and unsteady. "This is a lockdown. This is not a drill. Teachers, secure your classrooms immediately. Students, follow protocol and stay silent." The room froze. Mr. Callahan's face drained of color as he hurried to the door, locking it with a loud click. My heart kicked up, a dull thud in my chest. Lockdowns weren't new. We'd had drills before, crouching under desks while the vice principal roamed the halls, pretending to be an intruder. But this was different. The principal's voice had trembled, and that static, it lingered in my head like a warning. "Everyone, under your desks," Mr. Callahan whispered, his eyes darting to the windows. We scrambled, shoving backpacks aside, squeezing into the cramped spaces. I ended up next to Sarah, a quiet girl who always sat in the back. Her breathing was shallow, her hands gripping her knees. I wanted to say something reassuring, but my mouth was dry, and the silence in the room felt like it could shatter at any moment. The protocol was simple. Stay low, stay quiet, wait for the all clear. But as the minutes dragged on, the silence grew heavier. No one spoke, but you could feel the panic creeping in, like a fog seeping under the door. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I risked a glance. A group chat was blowing up, kids from other classes, whispering about what they'd heard. "Someone's in the building," one message read. "Saw a guy with a bag near the gym," said another. My stomach twisted. Rumors spread fast, but something about these felt too real. Then we heard it, a faint thud from the hallway. Not loud, but deliberate, like a footstep. Mr. Callahan stiffened, his hand hovering near the phone on his desk. Another thud, closer this time. Sarah grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. I didn't pull away. My eyes were locked on the door, on the small window above the handle. It was frosted glass, but shadows moved behind it, vague and distorted. Was it a teacher? A cop? Or something worse? The intercom crackled again, but this time it wasn't the principal. A low, garbled voice came through, almost like a whisper, but it was impossible to make out the words. It sounded wrong, like someone was speaking through a broken radio. The class exchanged glances, and I saw fear in everyone's eyes, even the tough kids who never flinched. Mr. Callahan picked up the phone, but before he could dial, the line went dead. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. I don't know how long we sat there, listening to the building creak and groan. Every sound was a threat, the hum of the air vents, the distant slam of a locker. My mind raced, piecing together scraps of what I had heard. Northridge wasn't a bad school, but it wasn't perfect either. There'd been fights, kids caught with knives, even a bomb threat last year that turned out to be a prank. But this felt different, like something had been waiting to snap. Sarah whispered, so quiet I barely heard her. "What if it's not a person?" I shot her a look, thinking she was losing it, but her eyes were wide, serious. I heard something last week, she said. In the library. A voice coming from the vents. It wasn't human. I wanted to laugh it off, but the way she said it, the way the room seemed to press in around us, made my skin crawl. I'd heard stories too. Kids saying the old wing of the school was haunted, built on some sketchy land nobody talked about. I never bought into it. But now, crouched under a desk, I wasn't so sure. Another sound, this time from above. A faint scraping like nails on metal coming from the ceiling. My eyes darted up, scanning the tiles. Northridge was old, with a maze of ducts and crawl spaces nobody bothered to maintain. Could someone be up there? Or something? The scraping stopped, then started again, moving toward the corner of the room. Mr. Callahan grabbed a yardstick, holding it like a weapon, his face slick with sweat. I pulled out my phone again, ignoring the protocol. If we were in danger, I needed answers. The group chat had gone quiet, but there was a new message from Jake, a senior in the science wing. They found something in the basement. Cops are here, but they're not talking. The basement. Nobody went down there except the janitors. It was a damp, creepy maze of storage rooms and rusted pipes. Last year, some kids broke in on a dare and came back shaken, saying they'd seen weird symbols scratched into the walls. The scraping stopped, but now there was a new sound, a low hum, almost like a chant, coming from the walls themselves. It was faint, but it vibrated in my chest, making my teeth ache. Sarah was shaking now, her breath hitching. I grabbed her hand, not sure if I was comforting her or myself. The hum grew louder, then cut off abruptly. Silence again, but it wasn't a relief. It was worse, like the calm before a storm. The door rattled. It was subtle at first, just a slight jiggle of the handle. Then it came again, harder, like someone was testing the lock. Mr. Callahan crept toward the door, yardstick raised. But before he could get close, the handle stopped moving. We waited, barely breathing. Then, from the other side of the door, came a sound I'll never forget. A laugh, low, guttural, like it was scraped from the bottom of someone's throat. It wasn't human, but it wasn't animal either. It was something else, something that didn't belong here. I don't know who started crying first, but the sound spread, soft sobs breaking the silence. Mr. Callahan backed away from the door, his hands shaking. My phone buzzed again, but I couldn't look. My eyes were glued to that door, waiting for it to burst open, for whatever was out there to come for us. The laugh came again, closer now, like it was right outside the glass. I could almost see it in my mind, a shape, hunched and wrong, its eyes glinting in the dark. Then, as suddenly as it started, the intercom blared to life. All clear. The lockdown is lifted. Please return to your regular schedule. The principal's voice was calm now, almost too calm. Nobody moved. Mr. Callahan stared at the intercom, then at us, like he didn't trust it. The room stayed silent, everyone waiting for someone else to make the first move. Finally, Mr. Callahan unlocked the door, peering into the hallway. "It's empty," he said, but his voice was hollow. We filed out slowly, glancing over our shoulders, half expecting something to lunge from the shadows. The halls were normal. Kids streaming out of classrooms, teachers talking in hushed tones. But the air felt wrong, like the school itself was holding its breath. I found Jake later, near the cafeteria. He looked pale, his eyes darting around. "What happened in the basement?" I asked. He hesitated, then leaned in close. "They found a room," he said. "One that wasn't on the blueprints. There were things in there. Bones, maybe. and writing all over the walls. The cops sealed it off, but they're not saying what it was. I pressed him for more, but he shook his head, like he was afraid to say it out loud. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in my house sounded like that scraping in the ceiling. Every shadow looked like that shape behind the door. I kept thinking about Sarah's words, about the voice in the vents. I looked up Northridge's history, digging through old forums and local news archives. Most of it was mundane, but there was one article from the 70s, half buried on a conspiracy site. It mentioned a cult that used to meet in the area, performing rituals in abandoned buildings. One of those buildings, the article claimed, was torn down to build Northridge High. The next day, school was back to normal, or at least it pretended to be. Nobody talked about the lockdown, not openly, but you could see it in people's eyes. The way they flinched at loud noises, the way they avoided the old wing. Sarah wasn't in class. I heard later she'd transferred, her parents pulling her out overnight. I didn't blame them. Weeks passed, and the story faded, replaced by midterms and football games. But I couldn't shake it. I started noticing things, scratches in the hallways, too high to be accidental, or whispers in empty classrooms when I stayed late for study hall. Once, I swear I saw a shadow move in the library, too quick to be real. I told myself it was nothing, just my mind playing tricks. But deep down, I knew better. I don't go to Northridge anymore. I graduated last spring, moved to a college across the state, but I still dream about that day, about the laugh outside the door, the hum in the walls. Sometimes, I wake up in a cold sweat, convinced I hear it again, echoing in the dark. I've tried to find answers, but the more I dig, the less I want to know. Jake messaged me a few months ago. Said they're renovating the school, tearing out the old basement. He heard the workers found something else down there, something they wouldn't talk about. I don't know what was in that school, what's still there, waiting in the dark. But I know one thing. Some doors, once opened, don't close. And whatever we locked down that day, it's not gone. It's just waiting. I was never one for ghost stories or urban legends. Growing up in a small town where everyone knew everyone, the scariest thing was missing curfew and facing my dad's disappointed stare. But what happened during my senior year at Willow Creek High changed me. It wasn't just a lockdown drill gone wrong. It was something else. Something that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. My name's Ethan, and this is what happened. It was a Tuesday in October, the kind of gray, chilly day that makes you want to stay in bed. I was 17, coasting through my last year of high school, more focused on sneaking glances at Sarah in math class than on my grades. The bell for third period had just rung, and I was slouched at my desk in Mr. Carver's history class, doodling in the margins of my notebook. That's when the intercom crackled to life. "Attention, all students and staff!" Principal Hayes' voice boomed, tight and clipped. "This is not a drill. We are initiating a code red lockdown. Secure your classrooms immediately. Do not open your doors for anyone." The room went dead silent. Mr. Carver froze mid-sentence, his marker hovering over the whiteboard. We'd had lockdown drills before. Boring routines where we'd huddle in the corner, whisper jokes, and wait for the all clear. But this felt different. Hayes' voice had a tremor, like he was trying to keep it together. My stomach twisted. "All right, everyone. You know the drill," Mr. Carver said, his voice too calm, like he was forcing it. "Under the desks, against the wall, away from the windows. Now." We scrambled. Desks scraped against the linoleum floor as my classmates dove for cover. I ended up wedged between Sarah and Jake, my best friend since middle school. Sarah's knees were pulled to her chest, her eyes wide. Jake, always the clown, whispered, "Bet it's just some prank. Maybe Tommy spiked the cafeteria food again." "Shut up, Jake," I hissed, but I wanted to believe him. I didn't. The air felt heavy, like the room was holding its breath. Mr. Carver locked the door, turned off the lights, and slid a filing cabinet in front of the entrance. Then he crouched with us, his face pale. Minutes dragged on. The only sounds were our breathing and the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, even though they were off. I kept glancing at the door, its small window covered with a black curtain as per lockdown protocol. My heart was pounding, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Not just wrong, bad. Then we heard it. A faint thud, like something heavy hitting the floor in the hallway. Everyone froze. Sarah grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Another thud, closer this time. Then a low, guttural sound, like a groan, but not quite human. It was wrong, like it didn't belong in a high school hallway. My mouth went dry. "What the hell was that?" Jake whispered, his voice barely audible. Mr. Carver shushed us, but his eyes were locked on the door. The groans grew louder, accompanied by a dragging sound, like something was being pulled across the floor. I tried to tell myself it was a janitor, maybe moving equipment. But janitors don't make noises like that. And why would they be out there during a lockdown? The dragging stopped right outside our door. I held my breath, my pulse hammering in my ears. The doorknob rattled. Once, twice. Someone, or something, was trying to get in. Sarah whimpered, and I clamped a hand over her mouth, my own panic rising. The rattling stopped, and for a moment, I thought it was over. Then came a slow, deliberate scratch, like nails dragging down the door's metal surface. I don't know how long we sat there, listening to that sound. It felt like hours, though it was probably only a minute. The scratching stopped, and the silence was worse. I kept waiting for the all clear, for Hayes to come back on the intercom and tell us it was a false alarm. But the intercom stayed silent. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Phones were supposed to be off during lockdowns, but I'd forgotten. I pulled it out, hands trembling, and saw a text from an unknown number. "Don't trust the announcement. It's not safe. Stay where you are." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Who sent this? How did they have my number? I showed it to Jake, whose face went pale. "Dude, what the hell?" he mouthed. Before I could respond, the intercom crackled again. But this time, it wasn't Hayes. It was a woman's voice, low and distorted, like it was coming through a bad connection. "Students and staff, the lockdown is over. Please proceed to the gymnasium for an assembly. Do not remain in your classrooms." Relief washed over the room. Kids started to move, but I grabbed Jake's arm. "Wait, the text." "What? You're going to trust some random message over the principal?" He snapped, but he didn't sound sure. Mr. Carver hesitated, his hand on the filing cabinet. "We follow protocol," he said, but his voice wavered. "We go to the gym." "No," I said, louder than I meant to. Everyone stared at me. "Something's wrong. That wasn't Hayes, and that noise outside." "Ethan, enough!" Mr. Carver snapped. "We can't stay here." But Sarah backed me up. He's right. That voice sounded off. And what was that thing in the hall? The class erupted into whispers. Some wanted to go, others wanted to stay. Mr. Carver looked torn, but before he could decide, the door shook. Not a knock, a hard, deliberate bang. Then another. The filing cabinet rattled with each hit. "Get back!" Mr. Carver yelled, shoving us toward the corner. The banging grew louder, faster, like whoever or whatever was out there was desperate to get in. The door groaned under the pressure, the lock straining. I grabbed a pair of scissors from a desk, my hands slick with sweat. Jake picked up a chair, holding it like a weapon. The banging stopped as suddenly as it started. Silence again. My ears rang. Then, from the other side of the door, came a whisper. Not through the intercom, but right there, inches away. "Ethan." I froze. My name. It said my name. The voice was raspy, like it hadn't been used in years. Sarah was shaking, tears streaming down her face. Jake looked like he was going to puke. "Dude, how does it know you?" he hissed. "I don't know," I whispered back, my throat tight. But I did know one thing. We couldn't go to the gym. Whatever was out there wasn't human, and it wasn't safe. Mr. Carver was losing it. "We can't stay here," he kept saying, pacing. "We have to follow protocol." "Protocol's gonna get us killed," I snapped. I don't know where the courage came from. Maybe it was fear masquerading as bravery. "We need to get out. Not the gym. Somewhere else." The school had an old maintenance tunnel in the basement, used for storage and repairs. It led to the football field, far from the main building. If we could get there, we might have a chance. But it meant crossing the school, past whatever was out there. I laid out the plan. Most of the class was too scared to argue, but a few, including Jake and Sarah, nodded. Mr. Carver protested, but when the whisper came again, "Ethan, open the door," he shut up. We moved the filing cabinet as quietly as we could. My heart was in my throat as I turned the lock. The hallway was empty, but the air felt wrong, thick with a metallic smell, like blood. We crept out, sticking close, scissors and chair legs clutched like lifelines. The school was a maze of shadows. Lockers loomed like tombstones, and every corner felt like a trap. We made it to the stairwell when we heard it again, that dragging sound coming from above. We ducked into a janitor's closet, barely breathing. The dragging passed, but not before I saw something through the crack in the door. A shape, tall and hunched, moving in a way that wasn't human. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I bit my tongue to keep from screaming. We reached the basement after what felt like forever. The maintenance tunnel was behind a rusted door, half hidden by boxes. Jake and I pried it open, the hinges screaming in protest. Inside was pitch black, the air damp and sour. We didn't have a choice. We went in. The tunnel was narrow, the walls slick with mold. Our footsteps echoed, too loud in the dark. I kept my phone's flashlight on, the beams shaking in my hand. Sarah was behind me, her breathing ragged. Jake brought up the rear, muttering curses under his breath. We were halfway through when the tunnel went silent. Not just quiet, silent, like the world had stopped. My flashlight flickered. Then, from behind us, came a laugh. Low, wet, like it was choking on itself. It wasn't Jake. It wasn't any of us. "Run," I whispered. We sprinted, the laugh chasing us, growing louder, closer. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I didn't stop. The tunnel seemed to stretch forever, the exit always just out of reach. Sarah tripped, and I hauled her up, her sobs mixing with the laughter. Finally, we burst out onto the football field. The cold night air hit me like a slap. We collapsed in the grass, gasping, waiting for that thing to follow. But it didn't. The tunnel was silent, the school dark and still in the distance. We didn't go back. We ran to the road, flagged down a car, and got the hell out. The police came later, but they didn't find anything. No intruder, no bodies, nothing. The official story was a false alarm, a prank gone wrong. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw. I don't sleep much anymore. When I do, I dream of that tunnel, that laugh, my name whispered in the dark. I keep my phone off, terrified of another text. Sarah moved away. Jake doesn't talk about it. Mr. Carver quit teaching. Willow Creek High is still there, same as always. Kids go to class, laugh in the halls, live their lives. But sometimes, late at night, I check the local news, half expecting a headline about another lockdown. And I wonder if it's still out there, waiting for me. I'll never forget the day the lockdown alarm blared through the halls of Westbridge High. It was a Tuesday, late October, the kind of gray, damp day that makes you feel like the world's holding its breath. I was 17, a junior, sitting in Mr. Callahan's history class, doodling in the margins of my notebook while he droned on about the Cold War. The clock above the door read 1:47 p.m. when the speaker crackled to life. Code red. This is not a drill. Code red. The words hit like a punch. Mr. Callahan froze mid-sentence, his chalk hovering over the board. The room went dead silent, save for the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. My stomach twisted as I glanced at my classmates. 22 kids, all wide-eyed, some already trembling. Code red meant an active threat, a shooter maybe, or something worse. Under your desks now, Mr. Callahan whispered, his voice tight. He moved to the door, locking it with a soft click, then dragged a filing cabinet in front of it. The screech of metal on tile made my teeth ache. I slid off my chair, crouching beneath the flimsy wooden desk, my knees pressed to my chest. The air felt thick, like it was pressing down on us. I could hear Emily, 2 desks over, breathing too fast, like she was trying not to cry. The alarm stopped, but the silence was worse. It was heavy, unnatural, broken only by the occasional creak of the building or a muffled sob. My mind raced. Was someone out there? Had they gotten inside? Westbridge was a small school, maybe 600 kids, in a quiet town where nothing ever happened. But I'd seen the news. Schools like mine weren't safe anymore. Minutes crawled by. My legs cramped, but I didn't dare move. Mr. Callahan crouched by the door, clutching a pair of scissors like a weapon. His face was pale, his jaw clenched. I wondered if he was as scared as we were. Then a sound, a faint thud, like a door closing somewhere down the hall. My heart slammed against my ribs. Everyone froze. Emily whimpered, and Sarah, next to her, hissed, "Shut up!" Another thud, closer this time. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate, echoing in the empty corridor. They stopped right outside our classroom. I held my breath, my pulse roaring in my ears. The door handle jiggled just once, then stopped. Someone was testing it. Mr. Callahan raised the scissors, his hand shaking. I wanted to scream, to run, but there was nowhere to go. The footsteps moved away, fading into the distance. I exhaled, my chest burning, but the relief didn't last. A new sound came through the walls, a low, guttural hum, like someone chanting under their breath. It was faint, almost too quiet to hear, but it sent a chill down my spine. It didn't sound human. I glanced at Jake, my best friend, crouched under the desk next to me. His eyes were wide, his knuckles white as he gripped the desk leg. "What the hell is that?" he mouthed. I shook my head. I didn't know. I didn't want to know. The chanting grew louder, more distinct. Words, maybe. but in a language I couldn't place. It wasn't English, wasn't Spanish or anything I'd ever heard. It sounded old, like something you'd hear in a nightmare. The temperature in the room seemed to drop, the air growing sharp and cold. My breath fogged in front of me, impossible in the stuffy classroom. Emily was crying now, her hands clamped over her mouth. Mr. Callahan hissed at her to be quiet, but his voice cracked. Then, a scream. It came from another classroom, maybe 2 doors down. High-pitched, raw, cut off abruptly. My blood turned to ice. Someone was hurt, or worse. The chanting stopped, replaced by a heavy, oppressive silence. I could feel it, like a weight on my chest, like something was watching us, waiting. The speaker crackled again. "All clear?" a voice said, calm and mechanical. "The threat has been neutralized. Please remain in your classrooms until further notice." Neutralized? What did that mean? My mind spun with images of police, SWAT teams, a body on the floor. But something felt wrong. The voice on the speaker, it was Principal Harper, I was sure, but it sounded flat, lifeless, like he was reading a script. And the chanting, that wasn't a shooter. That wasn't anything I could explain. Mr. Callahan didn't move. He stayed by the door, scissors still in hand, his eyes locked on the handle. "We wait," he said, barely audible. "We don't open that door." Time dragged on. 5 minutes, 10, 20. My phone was in my backpack, useless under the desk. No one dared reach for theirs. The cold lingered, unnatural, seeping into my bones. I kept thinking about that scream, about the chanting, about the footsteps. What was out there? Was it really gone? Then, a knock. Soft, almost polite in the classroom door. Everyone jumped. Mr. Callahan gripped the scissors tighter, his face a mask of fear. "Who's there?" he called, his voice shaking. No answer. Just another knock, slower this time. Then a voice, low and rasping, like it was coming from a throat full of gravel. "Open the door." My heart stopped. It wasn't Principal Harper. It wasn't anyone I knew. The voice was wrong, like it didn't belong in this world. Jake grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. "Don't," he whispered. Mr. Callahan didn't move. "Identify yourself," he said, louder, trying to sound authoritative. But I could hear the terror in his voice. The knocking stopped. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then the door rattled, hard, like something was slamming against it. The filing cabinet shuddered but held. Emily screamed, and this time, no one shushed her. The rattling stopped, and the voice spoke again, closer now, like it was right on the other side of the door. "You can't hide forever." I don't know how long we sat there, frozen, waiting for the next sound. It could have been minutes or hours. My mind was a blur of fear and questions. Who was out there? What did they want? Why us? The cold never left, and neither did the feeling of being watched. I kept glancing at the windows, half expecting to see a face pressed against the glass. But there was nothing. Just the gray sky and the empty parking lot beyond. Finally, the speaker crackled again. "Teachers, please escort your students to the gymnasium for a debriefing. The situation is under control." Mr. Callahan hesitated. He looked at us, his eyes searching our faces like he was waiting for someone to tell him what to do. None of us spoke. The scissors were still in his hand, his knuckles white. "Stay close," he said finally, moving the filing cabinet aside. The screech of metal was deafening in the silence. He opened the door, and I braced myself for something to lunge at us. But the hallway was empty. Too empty. No police, no paramedics, no signs of a struggle. Just flickering lights and a faint smell, like burnt hair. My skin prickled as we shuffled out, staying close together, our footsteps echoing. The chanting was gone, but the cold lingered, following us like a shadow. The gymnasium was packed with students and teachers, everyone whispering, some crying. Principal Harper stood at the front, his face pale but composed. He said there had been an incident, that a disturbed individual had entered the school but was apprehended. No one was hurt, he claimed. The scream I'd heard? Just panic, he said. A misunderstanding. I didn't believe him. Neither did Jake. We sat in the bleachers, scanning the crowd, looking for answers. Something was off. The teachers looked nervous, their eyes darting to the exits. Some kids were missing. Not many, maybe 5 or 6, but enough to notice. I thought of the scream, the chanting, the voice at the door. Neutralized, they'd said. But what did that mean? They sent us home early. My mom was waiting in the parking lot, her face tight with worry. She hugged me like she'd never let go, asking over and over if I was okay. I said I was, but I wasn't. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me out of that school. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every shadow looked like it was moving. I kept my phone on, scrolling through texts from Jake and other kids. Rumors were flying. Someone said they'd seen a man in a hood near the school. Others swore they'd heard chanting too. One kid, Tyler, said he'd seen something in the hallway during the lockdown. Something that wasn't human. No one believed him. I wasn't sure I did either, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next day, school was canceled. The day after that, they said it was safe to come back. I didn't want to, but my mom made me. The halls felt different, like the air was heavier. Kids whispered about the missing students. Officially, they'd transferred. But no one bought it. I kept my head down, avoiding Mr. Callahan's class. He looked different too, older, like he hadn't slept in days. Weeks passed, and the story faded. People stopped talking about it like they wanted to forget. But I couldn't. I started noticing things. Scratches on the door of Mr. Callahan's classroom, faint but deep, like claw marks. A weird symbol carved into a bathroom stall, one I couldn't find online no matter how hard I looked. And sometimes, late at night, I'd hear it again, that low guttural hum, just at the edge of my hearing. I don't know what happened that day. I don't know what was in the school or if it's still there. But I know it wasn't just a disturbed individual. Something was wrong with Westbridge High. Something older and darker than any of us could understand. And sometimes, when I'm alone, I still feel it watching me, waiting for me to open the door.